The 2018 general elections. The issues that matter. The people that matter. This is Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan.
Bula Vinaka, good evening and namaste to all our listeners on VTFM and all our viewers on our Facebook page, Fiji Village, as we go live again on our special general elections Talk Back Straight Talk, where we talk to the different political parties on what are their policies going into the 2018 general elections, what are their main issues that they'd like to take forward to the people of Fiji, and it's for you to decide. The voters, on what you think of the policies, dissect those policies. For us, we provide a platform for all the political parties, and tonight we've got the sixth political party. We've had 5 parties already come individually on our talkbacks to talk about their policies. Of course, we are going into just less than 2 weeks remaining for the campaign period to come to an end. And of course, with pre-poll voting starting on the 5th of November, with some parties not having manifestos out as yet. So we will also be talking about that with the other parties, and including the party tonight, about manifestos and what people expect. Tonight we have the leader of the new political party, Hope, Tupou Draunidalo, in the studio for us to talk about her party and her policies. Good evening, Tupou, and also thank you very much on behalf of our listeners and viewers for accepting our invitation for Straight Talk.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Now we'll go right into talking about setting up of Hope. Why have you decided to set up the Hope Party?
Some of us believe that what we wanted for Fiji was not being served by the established parties, and that's why I thought we might set up another party. And we thought that the Tebet polls at that time, for 2 years it was running, there were 32% undecided and about 10% who didn't say. So we thought, well, perhaps our views align, and perhaps we could establish a party that will have a vision and a path that's very different to what's already out there, and we'll see if the people of Fiji think so too.
Tupou Draunidalo, the leader for Hope Party, is in the studio tonight on Straight Talk. You can call us on 3314-766 with your questions, anything that you want to ask Ms. Draunidalo in relation to the Hope Party. Now, Ms. Draunidalo, who was behind the setting up of Hope, and are they still with the party?
There were a few of us who got together and thought that we should establish this party. And there are 2 prominent names who are no longer with us, and they've already made media statements as to why they're not here, and we wish them well.
That would be Mick Beddoes and Peter Wangavono.
That's correct, yeah.
Are they still campaigning in any capacity with Hope after the setting up of the party?
No, they left well before the party was set up.
Now, a lot of people are asking this question in relation to the more parties being set up, the more the split of the votes. From your point of view, will this split the votes further, resulting in some parties not reaching the 5% threshold?
Thank you for that question, because we've heard that there's one party in particular, and maybe 2 of them in the opposition, that have gone around Fiji very, how shall I say it, very strongly on this issue, to say that Hope is the party that's going to split their votes. I find that almost a concession of fear and a concession of that they're not going to do well. If they're very confident in their what they stand for and their policies, they should not worry about any other party. And we're quite surprised at Hope that people are putting these questions to us and not to the other parties, like, say, the other parties that are also there that are not in government.
We have asked Unity Fiji. They also gave the reason as the Tabot research of the undecided voters that they wanted to capture that. But talking about the opposition parties, did you have any talks with those parties? Did they approach you to sort of form a united front to go into the general elections?
You know, even before we were registered, there were overtures that we should join them or sit with them in forums. And I just, thought, and so did my colleagues, if we're going to sit with them, if we're going to join with them, why are we even establishing a new party? The whole reason why we're establishing a new party is because we want to be different from them. And if we want to be different from them, why are we going to sit with them?
From the parties, Ms. Draunidalo, that you have already in in Parliament, because Parliament is dissolved, the opposition parties have their own policies, what they were trying to achieve, and then you had the Fiji First, which was the ruling party. From your perspective, you couldn't mix with them based on the policies of the three parties that were in Parliament?
The Hope Party, and it's also in our constitution, about membership of the party, that we will not, I think the constitution says that membership of the party does not look too kindly on those who are beneficiaries of the immunity clause. Now, I think that was a distinguishing feature of our party, and you can see from that why it will be difficult to be associated with some of those parties. Having said that, we have made it very clear in our pronouncements what it is that we want to do for Fiji. Our big vision is to make Fiji as much as possible like Australia and New Zealand, a liberal democracy, and the main beneficiary of that is private investment. Fiji needs a lot of private investment, much more than we have now. And I know the government will agree, and every other opposition party will agree. Fiji needs a lot of private investment, and all we are saying is, for that to happen, we need to give the necessary conditions for investors to want to part with their money to invest in this country. And there are investors who are parting with their money, local and foreign, but there's a study that was done recently. I wish I had brought a copy here. I think it was done by recorded by the Commonwealth Secretariat, talking about the diaspora there. They said those who were surveyed said they have money to invest back in Fiji. They love Fiji, but they said they wouldn't invest, and the top reason they gave was political stability. And we in our party just thought that if we keep giving this picture to the world and to our local investors, that we are okay with endorsing as leaders those who will inspire copycats, then will not attract the amount of private investment that we need.
Based on statistics, Ms. Draunidalo, you can see people are returning, even with now a dual citizenship being allowed under the Constitution. We see more people returning. You believe you can accelerate that further, and how will you do that?
Again, this is from the words of that diaspora themselves. They're the ones who are saying it's that picture that makes them not feel comfortable with parting with their money to invest in Fiji. Political instability. And I know the government will say, but we've been stable for the last 12 years since they've run the government. That's correct. It's not about them. It's about next.
Ms. Tupou Draunidalo, the leader of Hope Party, is in the studio tonight for Straight Talk. For questions, you can call us on 3314-766. You can also watch the live coverage of this talk back on our Facebook page, Fiji Village. Now, when is your manifesto coming up?
We should release it this week. We're aiming for that, but it's just the pulling together of policy papers we've already been distributing. I believe the first policy paper we put out was 2 or 3 days after registration.
in relation to manifestos, and as I said in our introduction, we've been asking the political parties. Now is less than 2 weeks remaining with you announcing your manifesto so close to the elections. What is the main reason for that? And how do you expect to take the message out with less than 2 weeks remaining to the whole of Fiji on what you will do if you do form government?
Like I've said, we've started releasing policy papers from 2 or 3 days after registration. People were shocked that we started releasing such detailed papers. And I think the first one we released was the biggest policy proposal that we have, which is up to $10 minimum wage sector by sector. Now, that was published in the Fiji Times. And from there, we've released many other policy papers on foreign policy, foreign investment laws, health, and so on.
But the manifesto is coming out this week.
Yes, and it will just draw on those policy papers.
What is the party's main focus, some of the main issues that you will be looking at?
Up to $10 minimum wage sector by sector, changing of the foreign investment laws, and the two areas of the economy we wish to bombard, at least in the first term if we elected, is agriculture and tourism. We would like to change the foreign investment laws to encourage investment from foreigners with high technology and money into these two areas, but also to partner with indigenous landowners whose land and resources that they will use. So when they come, we expect them to have majority shares, but also the laws that we'll amend, we'll try and put in there that after 3 or maybe 5 years, that the share ownership change in that company
for landowners to
become
have
majority shareholders, and there will be also an obligation on the foreigner to train the local partner. And I know any serious investor who brings that kind of money and that kind of technology to Fiji will vigorously train the landowners, because they want the landowners to have majority shares in a company and run the company with maximum profit. They don't want to come and give the company the majority shares to people who may not be able to run it. So the obligation will be there, and I think they'll fulfill it, because they'll want still, if they go down to 49% or 45% shares or 40%, they still want to make 49%, 45%, 40% of a lot of money.
Now, based on your assessment, which laws have to be changed? What are those laws at the moment? And to tell the people, this is the law and this is what the change will do.
Our foreign investment laws has certain lists of restricted activities that only locals can participate in, or only those that foreigners, and how much they must bring. So we just need to tweak those laws to carry our policy out in that manner.
Do you believe that even if a large investor is coming to the country and their main objective is to bring in millions of dollars, as you said, to invest, and they lose their majority shareholding as part of a new law that will come in, do you think that will be good for investor confidence?
Well, the way we have set it out in the policy paper, they'll know well ahead before they invest that this is the plan of the government. We will go out and attract these investors and say, this is what we would like you to do over this period of time. And of course, we will give, great benefits, tax benefits to these companies to attract them.
What type of tax benefits are you talking about?
Well, every government has given tax holidays to various companies who invest in various places. We'll look at that.
Now, we've got Hope leader Ms. Tupou Draunidalo in studio. Let's talk about one of your broad policies that you announced in relation to minimum wage. And there's been a lot of discussion about this, about $10 minimum wage. We've been speaking to different people, and they're saying, well, Hope Party is saying our pay will go up to $10 an hour, and as soon as they form government. Can you explain whether that will happen straight away or within 100 days when you form government, that the minimum wage for Fiji will be $10 an hour?
Our proposal is sector by sector. So we will start with one sector that it would be logical to start with a sector where the employers pay very high taxes. So we will tell if we're elected to government, within not very long, a month or two, we will call a summit to bring these businesses together, these high taxpayers, and we will ask them straight out. The government proposes, let's say if they pay 25% taxes to the government, we'll say the government proposes to give you 10% back. From that 10%, we would like you to raise the wages with 5% or 7% of what you're getting back, and you can save the rest, 3%. And from that 7%, raise the wages of your employees, and they will give productivity pledges to you as part of our proposal.
So you'll go sector by sector. So for people to know, it's not like everybody will get a pay increment of $10 an hour minimum wage.
Yes,
that's off the table. That's not happening.
It's sector by sector.
Okay.
And one sector that has thousands of employees that I know of, and the employers pay high taxes, employs 1,000 or 2 people, so 2,000 or thousands of people, and they'll benefit.
Now, talking about sector by sector, so do you have a plan on which sector you'll start off with?
I think the sector that is quite burdened with taxes, if I can put it that way, and we've heard back, is the tourism sector.
Tourism sector. So you will put the minimum wage for tourism workers at $10 an hour.
We'll ask the employers, those who are paying 25%, and it's voluntary. We're not forcing anyone.
25%, which taxes are those that you're talking about?
I think the combination of taxes.
All the taxes?
Yes.
So that's some of the taxes are passed down to the consumers as well. You're taking all of those into consideration. Now, in relation to that, what happens to those sectors where they say, we don't want this?
That's fine.
So it will not be a national minimum wage?
No, and it won't be forced.
It won't be forced. It won't be a national minimum wage. It will be an option given to people. What if none of the industries say, we don't want it? I've been telling other media outlets, it'll be very hard pressed for us to find one industry that pays a lot of taxes that doesn't want to save a bit of it. Because our proposal is not to say, we'll give you 10% back and you have to pay the whole 10%. So it just goes back to where they are now. There's no extra burden on them. Some may say, yeah, okay, fine. It might be better for us to pay our employees more. Maybe we'll get more productivity out of that. So they still win. But we're saying, no, just a portion of it you can give to increase the wages. So a waiter who's on $4.80, I've used this example before on another program. A waiter who's on $4.80 now, employer gets 10% taxes back, may get $6 an hour or $8 an hour, and productivity pledges to the employer. But it's all dependent on whether the employer wants to get into this program that you'll set up.
That's part of our proposal, and that's part of our due diligence and consultation process.
Ms. Draunidalo making it clear there that there's no national minimum wage rate going up to $10. It will be through consultation with the employers. And the other question, Ms. Draunidalo, is you will definitely lose revenue when you reduce taxes on one side, and government needs revenue to provide services. Have you taken into consideration how much money will be lost?
Yes, studies have shown around the world that we have read, and I wish I had brought them with me to show to you, that those who are earning wages, they will use whatever increase they have in their wages, because they go to the shop almost every day to buy food and whatever else they need. They're not, people who are wealthy, they don't, that's not the habit that they are in, those who don't earn wages. They already have enough, and they don't have to use any increase or whatever it is, goes back to investment or savings. But those who are on wages use the wages to buy goods, and that comes back to the government.
So you'll depend on consumer spending.
That's correct.
To drive it. Any figures that you've worked out? Definitely you've said sector by sector. Tourism is our biggest foreign exchange earner, and for the country, which we heavily rely on when we pay for goods that we import. What type of amount are we looking at projected to lose?
like I say, we expect that money to come back from consumption from the workers.
But you don't have a figure on based on this taking place, on these taxes going down for the government, on the true and actual figure, dollar figure?
We have seen the studies around the world that those who earn wages will spend it.
Will spend it, yeah. Well, I know you were talking about a consumer-driven economy.
Yeah.
Now,
And
but at the same
and the
time,
Ministry of Economy has, I think in the 2016-2017 budget papers, in their document, they've set out that they get 700 million or so from direct tax income and 2-point-something billion from indirect
That's
charges,
right, indirect
fees,
taxes.
and so that shows heavy consumption tax income for the government, and we expect that to rise because also that wage earners complain all the time about cost of living, which is very true.
My question in relation to government revenue is because people are also asking this question: if you decide to reduce taxes, and it has always happened, a government coming in will then look at other taxes or duties to increase to try to cushion the blow for itself, because they need to have enough money for services to run. So have you taken that into consideration?
Yes, we have taken it into consideration, and we are confident that consumption by wage earners from earning a higher wage will be sufficient to cushion any losses from the taxes that we are giving back.
Now, you haven't got the figures that will be coming out maybe in the manifesto?
Yes,
a
they
bit
will
more
be.
detail about
Yes.
how much money you expected to lose and where you expect
We'll
to
use
pick up for
one or
consumer
two
spending.
sectors.
As far as that is concerned, apart from tourism, what other sectors will you be looking at?
Well, that's the sector that comes to mind now, and because they have a high burden of taxes, and that's what I'm going to discuss with you.
Now, we've got Chone from Director Vijay online. Good evening, Chone.
You have been against coup. When you were a member of parliament, you were very strongly against coup. The General Secretary for Fiji First has been mentioning about the coup of 87 and 2000. But he falls short of talking about the coup in 2006. What is your view on that? Whether the 2006 takeover was also a coup and the effect it has on the people. And the second question is about the constitution. Do you really believe that the constitution is the people's constitution, as the Fiji First parliamentarian have been saying? Your view on that?
Thank you. Perhaps because of the media, the circumstances in which the media was placed after the 2006 coup, not many people would have heard what some lawyers were doing in that period, of which I was one. I was vice president of the Law Society, and our opposition to the usurpation of lawful authority was made very clear on public record. We instigated court cases, and we supported the rights of human rights advocates at the time. We expressed our opposition to the use of violent means to remove a lawfully elected government. And that's been consistent through the years, in 2000 as well. And in 1987, the society had made those positions clear, and we were no different in 2006. So that's the position there. The matter was ultimately decided in 2009 in the matter of Garase and Bainimarama that questioned the legality of the 1997 Constitution and whether it was still in force, and the Court of Appeal said that it was, and then after that it was removed by the military. Now, from that time, I think this goes on to the second question of whether the 2013 Constitution is a lawful Constitution. Our view at Hope is it is a lawful Constitution. And I'm a lawyer that I don't practice at the moment because I just don't have the time to practice, and I had to close my practice for politics, but that's the practice on my own. But I'm a lawyer that was involved in quite a few constitutional law cases, and including that big one that went to the Court of Appeal in 2009. I was counsel on record for the CCF, which applied to the Court of Appeal at the last minute to be intervener to advise the court of the law, strictly the law, and not to take any partisan position. Now, the constitutional law, or the law that relates to constitutions that I know about, there are two ways, apart from changing the constitution within the rules contained in a constitution. There are two ways in which a constitution can be removed outside of those rules. And the two things that need to be met is the usurper has effective control of the country, which any court can see and take judicial notice of, or evidence is provided that the usurper has indeed effective control of the country. And the second test is that the people of the country, or at least the majority, have acquiesced to the rule of the usurper. And at law, that means that a constitution is finally done away with. Now, no one can dispute that after 2009, the usurping military had control, effective control, and the interim government had effective control of the government of Fiji. That was, I think, well known to everyone. It was the second test, which was whether the majority of the people of Fiji had acquiesced to the power of this usurper. And I had told colleagues then, when Professor Yash Guy's commission came to review the 1997 constitution and look into a new constitution, I told everyone, my friends and colleagues who were going to make submissions or who were against the usurping authority, I told them, look, when you go and make a submission to Professor Yash Guy and you tell him that all the problems you find with the 1997 constitution, and you go and give him proposals for a new constitution, that can be seen as your acquiescence to the rule of the usurping party. So it starts from there, and it ended with the general elections of 2014, where we all participated under that new constitution, which came after the Yash Guy process and after the draft was allegedly burnt. And that's where we all acquiesced. So, it would be reasonable for a lawyer to say that the two tests to be met of whether a constitution survives or has been usurped or been thrown away and replaced by a new constitution to which we are all now governed has been met. And that's why we are continuing now under the 2013 constitution. And we at the Hope Party, we are strongly for the rule of law and obeying the constitution, the law of the land, which we now see to be the 2013 constitution. And it would be good if all citizens of the country could and would respect that. And if we want to change it, we need to use the provisions in the Constitution to make those amendments.
Thank you. That's our Hope leader, Ms. Tupou Draunidalo. We'll go for a break and be right back.
Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan continues after the break.
No
This is Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan.
Welcome back in studio tonight, Hope Party leader Tupou Draunidalo. Now, Miss Draunidalo, just talking about the 2013 constitution, different parties have a different stand on this issue, on what they will do if they do form government. Fiji first, they said they will not make any changes. They will continue with the constitution, with the National Federation Party. They've said that it is not on their agenda in this election. It was on the agenda in the 2014 election. SODELPA has said they want changes to the constitution and they will start immediately. In relation to that, they are also looking at, and confirmed by Mr. Rambuka, that they're looking at a review of the whole process and try to bring back the 1997 constitution, and the other parties are holding a similar stand in relation to that issue. Now, what is the Hope Party's stand on the 2013 constitution? If you do form government, what will you do?
Well, the Constitution sets out very clearly how we can amend it. It requires, I think, 3/4 majority in the House and 3/4 majority in a referendum, which is pretty difficult to have unless you get the agreement of most parties in the House. Because if most parties in the House agree to amendments, then they will get the 3/4 majority number, and they will tell their supporters when it comes to a referendum, everybody vote in favor. So it'll be easy to meet the requirement. But in terms of amending the Constitution, the Hope Party is interested in some sections which we think limits individual rights, the Bill of Rights, because I think the Bill of Rights, most of the rights are limited by any written law. So a 26 bare majority government can pass any law to limit the rights that are in the Constitution, which we think is, it devalues the worth of a Bill of Rights that's in a Constitution. That those rights are meant to be entrenched for all time, and that no law can just come and, if you make it so hard to change the Constitution to require a 3/4 majority, excuse me, then these provisions which allow certain rights to be limited by a mere 26 majority in Parliament directly contradicts that difficult process of amending the Constitution. So you can amend the Constitution only if you meet those high barriers, but in order to limit Bill of Rights, you merely need to pass an act of Parliament.
So you will look at review of that if you are able to do that, of course.
Excuse me. Yes, we would be in favor of ensuring that the Bill of Rights has that value, which is strong and which is entrenched and which can only be changed or affected by the amendment of the Constitution itself through the process that's already laid there.
Ms. Draunidalo, are there any other sections that the Hope Party will be looking at amending in the Constitution?
That comes to mind, the Bill of Rights, and also Section 173, which entrenches certain laws that were brought in during a period that Parliament was not sitting, the media decree and the like. But of course, since the Hope Party is all for smooth transition and one that does not cause much friction or fracture should we win, because we want to attract private investment first and foremost. Even if those changes are not made, the government merely does not have to use the tools available to it in terms of limiting the rights of individuals under the Bill of Rights and so forth.
SODELPA leader Sitiveni Rambuka was on Straight Talk last week, and he said that they're looking at a review and they're looking at the possibility of bringing back the 1997 Constitution. What is your assessment of that?
Well, if they have a 3/4 majority in the House, then they can do it within the law. But if they don't have a 3/4 majority, they will not be able to unless they convince the other parties in the House that it's a good idea. We at the Hope Party have found a way to make amendments to the Constitution with a bare 26 majority.
Looking at the laws that can be changed.
Amending the parts of the Constitution.
Where there is a section where you can make the changes with just a majority in Parliament.
We have found a way that a 26 bare majority in Parliament can make those amendments smoothly.
Now, in relation to going back to the 1997 Constitution through the court process, that's what SODELPA wants to do. As a lawyer also, what is your assessment of that?
Well, good luck to them, as I say, and the matters of constitutional law that I've been involved with. Those are the two tests to be met. Whether the person that brought the new constitution had effective control. And some would say, many would say, yes, they had effective control. Then they brought the 2013 constitution, to which we acquiesced.
Isn't it strange that for some to say that we will come into the process under the current process, but we have to do this to bring back the old process? What's your standing on that, legal standing on that?
Well, again, amendments to the Constitution will be a national process, and I think according to what they want to do, if you want to do that, then I hope they've made the assessment on whether it's going to be a smooth one that doesn't involve too much friction internally.
A leader of Hope Party, Ms. Tupou and Draunidalo. If you have any questions, you can call us on 3314-766 on Straight Talk now. Ms. Draunidalo, what is your stand on the common name Fijian for all citizens of Fiji?
We are comfortable with it. I am personally, and so is the party.
No changes there?
No.
Will you reinstate the Great Council of Chiefs?
If a petition came to Parliament and the Hope Party was in government, and the petition came like it did in the Parliament that's just been dissolved, we will allow that petition so that a committee go around Fiji and consult all Tauke on whether they want a chief's body to come back, and to explain to the Tauke this is not some elite meeting body. This is actually one of the fundamental layers of trusteeship over what we own, the resources that we own, which is in the law. Do you want this body to come back where the heads of Yavusa sit, so forth, and what form do you want it in?
You don't have anything in the manifesto that you will bring back the Great Council of Chiefs. We've had this question asked for all parties by all the callers that have called about different issues, and GCC has been an issue. Will this party have something where they will bring back the GCC? Can you give a straight answer on whether you will go in that direction, or you will only go in that direction if people want it?
If the Tauke want it, after the parliamentary committee consults all the Tauke around Fiji, if the Tauke come back and say to the parliamentary committee, yes, we want that body to come back, but a body in this format, not in the format that it was before, whatever format that they choose and they're presented with, the Hope Party will make submissions to that committee as well, what we think should be the kind of chief's body that we think ought to come, and that's just being the heads of Yavusas instead of politicians. That would be the option put to the Tauke. If they want it, we'll allow it to happen.
So the Hope Party does not have a stand on it unless it comes from outside. You can't tell the voters now whether you will bring back the Great Council of Chiefs.
No, because we will let the Tauke choose for themselves whether they want that a body such as the GCC to come back, and in what form.
Now, does the Hope Party believe that there should be a chief's body like that?
The Hope Party sees a chief's body like that as a body of trustees, which should be a final consultation or permission process, if you will, before the resources of the Tauke are used in whatever way, so that they are not, how shall I put it, alienated.
With that in mind, will you still have some sort of chief's body set up? Not like the Great Council of Chiefs, but a chief's body, as you said, to be a group of trustees?
Well, we do have the Native Land Trust Board, and the other day I made very clear on another program that we will endeavor to make the board an independent one, independent from the government, so that the board be representative of the Tauke, the 14 provinces whose land resources are deposited there, so that they make the decision. And perhaps that independent body would be, in fact, the de facto chief's body.
So that could be the structure that you could look at for the people to know that the Hope Party may look at a setup of a chief's body who would be the trustees of the resources of
That-
the Itoke?
That could be a structure, and one that's just the membership is restricted to the heads of Yavusa.
Hope leader Ms. Tupou and Draunidalo there with the proposed setup of a body that would be trustees of resource owners who would be chiefs, maybe to be part of the Itoke Land Trust Board. Now I have a question from Govind from Nandi. Good evening, Govind.
Mr. Draunidalo, how much prize money are you looking at to offer the farmers, the cane farmers of the Fiji, because NFP has promised $100 per ton for the next 4 years. And one more thing, if you just because you don't have you're not contesting the full 51 seats, if you're holding the balance of power in the parliament, which party will you make a coalition with? Thank you.
Mr. Draunidalo.
Well, thanks for that curveball. I might attack that latter question first. We prefer to be either in government or the opposition. And as to the first question, I'm quite sure if the NFP proposes $100 a ton, it's one that's made with great care and assessment, and we wouldn't dispute it.
Would you be offering the cane farmers something similar?
Something similar. The whole party would be sympathetic to the needs of our cane farmers who have contributed immensely to the economy of this country.
Ms. Draunidalo, we've seen and assessments have been made since 1997 onwards. We had about 22,000 cane farmers, registered cane farmers, and that number has dropped to around 11,000. It's actually halved. And one of the main issues that they said caused this was the expiry of land leases and people moving away from cane farming because the younger generation didn't want to, thought it wasn't cool to be a cane farmer, or the older generation was worried about when their land leases would expire, it wouldn't be renewed. And you may remember late 1990s, when people in the middle of the night, they were asked to leave their homes because their leases had expired, and the land was taken back by the landowners, and then cane planting had actually dropped. Now, do you have any plan as far as sugar production is concerned on increasing production? Because the other issue that comes in, now we no longer enjoy preferential prices from the EU. That is gone. Now we are selling sugar at world market prices, and that is fluctuating. It goes from maybe $60, $70, $80 a ton. It could go lower than that depending on world market prices and the demand and the supply. Now, giving a fixed price, which may be a bit too much, would result in FSC or government forking out more money. Have you thought of all those things? Everything is linked back to land to make sure that more land is utilized for cane farming, to get people back into cane farming, and to ensure that farmers get more. What kind of plan do you have?
Well, to attract any kind of investment, we have to give the right conditions. And as you pointed out, land is a big one. And I've revealed on another program that our land tenure policy, we propose that the government lease land from landowners. In that way, the government is a buffer so that the landowners deal with the government directly in terms of commercial rental or commercial assessments of the money that's to be given to landowners for their land. And then from there, the government is to sublease to tenants, whether it's for subsidized housing, as housing is a big problem here in the densely populated areas, in our urban areas, or lease out the land for commercial purposes, sublease, or for indeed cane farming. And I think tenants would prefer to deal with the government. There's security of tenure there and certainty. Whichever party comes in, the government is the lessee of land, and an independent board is there to look after landowners and to make sure that they are paid their commercial rates, keep them happy. That's what we propose to do with native land. I think it'll go a long way to getting over this issue of land tenure as a form of attracting investment back into cane farming. But I've heard from, as told to me over the years, and particularly in the last 4 years, about the rising costs that farmers encounter. And they say it's very hard to make decent money from cane planting because of those costs. Those are things that the government will have to look at. If the government still relies on cane production and as a source of big foreign revenue. And again, our changes to foreign investment laws that we've put up in terms of agriculture, sugar is definitely part of agriculture. If we can find local or foreign investment that wants to invest big money and big technology in this sector for the right returns, then that's what we're tweaking the laws for.
What cane payments you're looking at? Going back to the question, have you made an assessment based on now we're paying at or selling sugar at world market prices? What would be the comfortable figure for the Hope Party to say to the farmers, if you come into government, you'll give this guaranteed price for cane?
I think it would be prudent once we're elected to look at the figures, because it's not all the figures are not available to us right now. So if we make an assessment or a guesstimate, it may not be helpful. We may give a figure that promises too much to the farmers, and then we get to government and we are not able to.
You may not want to give a guaranteed price
exactly.
based on world market prices.
Yes, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. We have to remember that this is still the second biggest or the third biggest industry that we have in terms of foreign currency. The government has to look at it seriously.
Hope Leader Ms. Tupou Draunidalo is in studio. You can call us on 3314-766 with your questions. Question from Tupou from Nambua. Good evening, Tupou.
Thank you. I have two questions. One, just like to ask Ms. Draunidalo her views about a collection of statistics, her position on collection of ethnic statistics being broken down into ethnic groups. What's her stand on that one? And secondly, what's her outlook or Hope's outlook on the priority of gender justice, and what will her government do to address that?
Thank you very much for those questions. I think studies have found internationally that it's always important to gather every relevant statistic, and of course ethnicity breakdown in any country is one of those relevant statistics that has to be gathered because of how they are affected by government policy and the like. So that's the answer to that. In terms of gender justice, if you're talking in terms of empowering women, Hope is fully on board with that, and we have, I think, our candidates from the 28 of us, 18 are women, and quite a few are mothers, those who are older and younger mothers. So we've tried to empower women in that way, to make the women in Fiji see that if you're a woman, if you are a mother, and if you're a provider for your family, you too can stand for Parliament. And it's an empowering and powerful statement, and that's something that's very dear to us.
Now, Ms. Draunidalo, another issue that different parties have made a different stand on is a current equal distribution of Itoke land lease payments. What is your stand on the equal distribution of Itoke land lease?
Well, we think that, first of all, that's a matter for the Vanua to decide. because it's their money and it's their culture. They should decide. I mean, in some of the Vanua, they like this equal distribution. The chief and everybody's happy with that. And I advised some relatives when the law first came, the change. I told close relatives, be happy. Be happy, it's now equal, because when the Vanua meets and there's this culture of Solisolevaki, everybody knows that the chiefs carry the burden, financial and otherwise. They have to go and do all the work that's associated with it. They carry a large portion of it. I told these relatives, be happy, because now the Vanua will see that even though you don't get 30%, you still go and do the 30% or 50% of the work. And that's only going to be a good look to Valevu and the chief leader. So that was my advice, that they take it on board. They did take it on board. They were very happy. Oh, yes, we didn't think of that. Very good. But in some places, I know some of the Vanua around Fiji, they've actually just agreed amongst themselves, landowning units. They've just directed all their monies into particular trustee accounts. And from there, it was as though the law never changed, because Tauke use that money, they pull it together for various things, to build things,
so
education.
You believe it's individual's choice. If they decide to give the money for the whole, they can do that?
Yeah.
Or they keep it with them? What will the Hope Party look at doing any changes to that, or you'll let the current system run?
We'll let the current system run unless unless the Vanua themselves tell us through their representatives, who are of course their chiefs through their heralds, tell us that the system needs to change, and for what reason. But we won't just be taking that from a particular... if that view comes to us in a strong way, we will again consult.
So at this point in time, you don't have a certain policy to look at going forward. It will depend on what happens, depending on if people want a change, then you will look into it.
Put it this way, I've not heard... since the law has come into effect, I've not heard of in my own personal knowledge of things, I've not heard of any disruption anywhere. Because, like I say, I also know of a lot of places where they have just done it themselves. They have just pulled their money together anyway, in spite of the law. They all know that the money is to be collected at a pool, because that's how the Tauke conduct various activities together, communally. So they pull their money together.
So you have gone around Fiji for the past 4, 5, 6 years. You haven't had feedback from people that we want the old system back?
Some places they have asked. They have said, it's easier for us because we do things communally. It's easier if the money went back to the old way of doing things.
And what your advice has been for them?
Well, my advice has been that if we get to government, we will look into the matter. But we've also told them, leadership and service to others is a thankless task, and one that should be done. Maybe we're very old-fashioned. Should be done without any thought of remuneration. Please carry the load, as most chiefs are brought up to do. And don't expect to be remunerated from it. And I think that's going to be probably unfair, and some chiefs will be very upset. But I know the majority of chiefs in this country are of that stature.
Hope Leader Ms. Tupou and Draunidalo. Now, another issue that people have been talking about is cost of living. A big one that people are talking about is VAT. Some are saying that a number of items VAT should be scrapped from them. VAT was reduced from 15% to 9% in 2016, and government has said that about $240 million was lost in revenue, and they had to look at other places to get that revenue. So whenever VAT is reduced, of course you have to look at other places where you can get government revenue from. What is your stand on some of these taxes and duties?
Again, I have said on another program that we agree that we should zero rate VAT for the food and things that a majority of households on low income buy every day. We are in agreement with that. And also to look into the levies and duties associated with those goods. Like I say, these wage earners on the lower income bracket, they always use their wages and their income on consumption. It will come back to the government.
So what items are you looking at?
We're going to put out in our manifesto a list of between 15 and 20.
15 to 20 items to make it VAT-free. Have you made an assessment how much money you lose in government revenue?
It will come out in the manifesto.
Okay. And with that loss of revenue, how will you pick it up again?
Again, consumption.
And if you do not pick up as much as you'd like to, how will you ensure that you continue to provide government services at the same level?
I think the Hope government, with what we want to project to the outside world and particularly to private investors, we will ensure that private investment is of such high level that not only consumption drives or brings that income back to government, but that there's more private investment so that that private investment pays.
A lot of issues have been talked about in relation to reducing taxes, but no one seems to be coming forward and saying, listen, we have to swallow the bitter pill and also look at increases in taxes and duties for some things because government needs the money. Do you have something like that?
As I've said, Vijay, the Hope Party and government would prefer to go the route of increasing private investment.
Increasing private investment, and how will you accelerate that?
Like that study that we've alluded to in the beginning, it said that political instability was the biggest reason why they didn't want to invest in Fiji. So the Hope Party needs to give an assurance once in government that there will be political stability. And just from the way that we've discussed about how we respect the rule of law, the right of individuals, the right of free media, and not hounding political opponents. These are the factors that go to encouraging private investors to invest here. I say that because in some parts of the country, I've got this question, people who worry about security and stability, and it's not just from one community, but even from landowning units, because they all now know that whenever there's instability in the country, we have financial difficulties, everybody. So even they ask, there's a party going around that is saying that if they win, they will put so-and-so into prison, they will do this, that, and the other. And what is your party going to do? Is your party also of the same mind? We make it very clear to them, if the Hope Party is elected, we have absolutely nil time and nil money to waste on looking backwards. We don't want to hound any political opponent or someone. We don't have a long list of people that we want to fire or investigate or any of those things. The Hope government would want a smooth transition, one in which the law is respected, we respect the rights of everyone, and we especially encourage a very strong opposition. These are the institutions that will encourage private investors to invest money in Fiji.
Hope Leader Tupou Draunidalo. Now, Ms. Draunidalo, another question. You're saying to boost private investment. You talked about utilization of land. What are some of the industries that you are looking at, and how will you ensure that these investors do come in and invest? Because you will really need that if you reduce the taxes, as you're saying, to boost your coffers. If not, it will be too hard for your government to survive.
Well, we've said that, and I've said too here, that the two areas that we wish to concentrate on is agriculture and tourism. We believe that Fiji can flourish with those two sectors. The other sector that's bringing a lot of foreign exchange to our country is remittances. Now, we've had this in mind in terms of talking of the other big policy that we have and we're very excited about in terms of education. Education is very dear. Most of the officials of our party are lawyers, all but one, and we've all had the benefit of great education, and we would like every Fijian child to have the same level of education. And I told this story in Parliament, and I want to repeat it here. There was a young boy born in the back road of Nandi. He left this country with his parents when he was about 7 or 8. After 1987, they migrated to Australia. He went through public school there, and he's one of the top Google executives. And I met his parents when I went to Sydney, I think it was last year. We went to puja at a temple. His father was serving the vegetarian meal after puja, drove me around and took me back to the residence where we were gathered at for more discussions. And he told me that that's what his son was doing because our host told me about him. His income in that past year was $4 billion, including stock options. A young boy from Nandi Back Road. Another who I know is related to Dr. Nandan's family in Nandi also. I'm told he was born in the back road of Nandi. Something special there in the back road of Nandi. This young man left also with his family after political instability in Fiji, went through the public school in New Zealand, I believe it was. And he's into IT medicine, and I'm told he has created and perfected a computer or a machine that does operations in this very, very niche market, and he's one of only a few in the world. All I'm saying is this is the kind of people we have in this country, the kind of talent, apart from all the other great talent that we have here. If we gave them the basics and the curriculum which we have set out in our policy on education, to change that, to ask because these donors are always knocking on our door to say, how can we help you? And I thought it would be a good idea, and the party thought it would be a good idea to just ask them, Australia, New Zealand, the EU and Japan. They have great schools and curriculums. That's where these two young men that I've used as examples went and flourished. We want to ask them, come here to Fiji and change our curriculum, take us to that standard.
Is that guaranteed that will happen?
Well, it's guaranteed that we will ask them and they will cooperate.
High hopes then.
They're just falling over themselves because they want to keep others out of the region. We're going to take advantage.
Now, in relation to, you said agriculture, so for private investment to go into agriculture, which specific areas are you looking at in agriculture?
We talked about sugarcane, but there are other crops that are there for export, and if we can maximize those, then yes, we will. And we'll encourage foreign investors, as I said, by tax holidays, things like that, so that they bring that money and technology to Fiji.
Which areas are you looking at for agriculture?
Which areas? Which particular area in Fiji? Well, I don't mean to mention this first because I'm related, but the Simatoka Valley Road is a big one. Also in Vanua Levu, there's a lot of areas there that can be developed, and if the landowners are willing to lease their land through their independent board to this kind of joint venture with the big investment, then it'll be great.
There'll be a lot of talking required to get people to come in. You believe that you would be able to achieve a lot within the first few years to try to get that in, because it will be all initial discussions. When will we see some of these things coming into fruition?
You're right there, that it takes a lot of discussion and a lot of selling on our part in terms of what's available in Fiji, what's good here, and how their investment will be well served here. But I think, Fiji is internationally known as paradise, except for that little issue of investors making the excuse about political instability. We'll have to really convince them on that.
Hope Leader Ms. Tupou Draunidalo is in studio for Straight Talk tonight. You can call us on 3314-766 if you have any questions. Now, Ms. Draunidalo, what can we do more and how have you made an assessment, and what can you tell our listeners to deal with the cases of abuse of women and children in Fiji?
The Hope Party knows of the no-drop policy that's there, but we also know that on the ground sometimes perhaps the no-drop policy does not eventuate. Some policemen still encourage reconciliation where it shouldn't be, but we also are sensitive to the issue of if men are punished severely, say in terms of the law, they lose their employment, that also affects the family. Issues to consider. That is no excuse for domestic violence, which should be dealt with. We commend the women's groups and their work in this area, the Fiji Women's Rights Movement and the Fiji Women's Crisis Center. They've done a lot of training, I believe, with the police and the no-drop policy. Our government would favor a policy where, where the police who are trained for this are graduates in related fields, and that they populate these police stations just to make sure that the no-drop policy really is a no-drop policy. Things like that we would favor. I know in New Zealand they now have paid leave for domestic violence victims. That's very progressive, and if the government of Fiji can afford it or find the money to do the same, the Hope government would be in favor of that.
There's a lot of talk about the need for sex education,
yes,
the need for moral values to be taught, about respect for women, respect for young girls from an early age, so that the boys growing up, they realize the importance of doing that, to change that mindset in totality. What does the Hope Party have to say about that?
You're correct there, Vijay, and thank you for that reminder, because that was really a point that I wanted to bring, is the education of the populace. We have a very strong patriarchal society, strong man culture here. The male is, it's reinforced by our culture and religion. So that education really needs to be taken out strongly in the school curriculums from a young age.
What will you do?
We will try and ensure that school curriculum includes the education that from a young age that influences men and women not to resort to violence in domestic situations.
We were talking to the acting education minister, and of course I have seen the books that are being used in our schools at the moment. Some of the books, or most of the books, are still ones when we were back in school, are still being used from the 1970s, and we have come to a point where we've got new technology, the world has moved to a new place, and the students are still sitting with books from the 1970s that were put together. It has been confirmed that a review of the curriculum is currently underway. How would you look at the curriculum that is being taught at the moment, and what is your view as a political party, if you do form government, in the review is underway? What do we expect if the Hope Party decides to further the review of the curriculum in schools?
Well, that was one of the first policy statements that we put out, that we would, in engaging with foreign governments, encourage those governments to come and assist Fiji to improve or take our curriculum to another level, to change it so that that sort of education is promoted. And also, I had mentioned in a video uploaded on the Hope page last evening that we would like curriculum to, by the time students reach Form 4, say, they go into 3 big streams. One stream would, those who want to concentrate on athletics and sports as a career, that stream would take them on to something like an Australian Institute of Sport, if Fiji could afford the same. I don't need to tell anyone in Fiji about the sports prowess of our people. Olympic champions, and champions in very many other fields, and we see the Coke Games every year. We would like to encourage that. I mean, if that talent is in Fiji, it'd be good if it could be nurtured through an Australian Institute of Sport-like thing that exists there in Canberra, where their diet is regulated, everything step by step, and also where those who go through that system partner with a local institution like, say, the FNU, where those students are encouraged to take sports psychology or something related to their career. So when they retire, they have that as something to fall back on. And the
You'll
second
provide
stream,
funding for that?
well, that is something that the Hope government would like to, and if we can afford it, we will. And the second stream
Will
is
we have
academia.
specifics,
Yeah.
On that, will we have
Will-
specifics in the manifesto?
It will be. And the second stream being academia for the normal academic pursuits. And the third stream for the arts, vocation and the arts. And this is a big thing, also mentioned in the video. I know the government, I've been told the government is establishing a contemporary arts center. We would like cultural arts to be also part of that, so the Tupou culture is kept alive and reinforced in a big way there, but not just Tupou culture, every other culture in this country. I've mentioned in that video, I saw some awesome classical Indian dances when I was growing up, maybe because I went to Super Grammar during our annual concerts and the like, and in Civic Center for various functions. That should be preserved and encouraged here, and also the Chinese culture, every other culture that's here. We should make Fiji a very international place, and that's something the Hope government would like to do.
Hope Party leader Ms. Tupou Draunidalo. Now, Ashok from Nambua has a question. Good evening, Ashok.
I want to ask a question to Tupou why she left the National Federation Party and she formed her own party.
Thank you for that question. Formed this party to serve an area, I thought, of public policy and politics that I thought the established parties were not serving at that time or now. And I have said this before, that the party made resolutions to work with every party, including SODELPA, and that's when I thought that was probably when I should try and form a party that just would not engage. And that's what we've done since we've been registered. We've just refused and just drawn a line and said, sorry, we do not want to sit down with, be seen with any coup maker, especially one who started it all in this country.
Now, Ms. Draunidalo, you were president of the National Federation, former president of the National Federation Party. I'm sure that a lot of people would be asking the question, how deep were the discussions between NFP and SODELPA were before the 2018 elections, or 2016 going into 2017, when we knew that elections will be in 2018? What kind of discussions had started to take place, and what really put you off that you had to go away from the party?
The NFP was working very closely with every opposition party from before the 2014 elections, and that's public knowledge. But when the current leader of SODELPA arrived on the scene, that's when I decided it's time to exit.
Just because he arrived at the scene and became the leader, you decided to exit, or there were some discussions that had started to take place?
No, I don't know of any discussions that had taken place. I know the leader of SODELPA has made comments, but I don't know of any discussions that had taken place. And I think if we go back to the time, these were quite notorious facts. My Twitter account, public, it showed that I was very harsh in my condemnation and comments. And to be fair to the party that I was president of, I can't be there, and the party is having discussions with all opposition parties, including that party, and then to have its president bashing away at it's not a very good thing to do. I didn't want to put the party in that position. They should carry on and have their discussions with all parties like they say they will. And this is nothing new. The National Federation Party is well known for its dialogue. They believe in dialogue all the time. And great on them, power to them. But I feel that some in my generation just feel, no, there's sometimes you just have to draw the line.
Ms. Draunidalo, now how many seats are you targeting in this year's general elections?
Well, we are fielding 28, and we hope to field all 28. We were going to field 30. We had written 30. The check was for $30,000, but 28 turned up because that day the weather was really bad, and 2 that didn't come, but the target was always 26, and anything above that was extra.
So how many seats are you planning to win?
We hope to win all 28.
All 28. You getting good feedback from the ground?
We're getting good feedback on the ground, where we could do more. And these last 2 weeks, it's not just in Fiji, but everywhere around the world, this is the 2 weeks.
Do you believe it will hurt you that your manifesto is coming out so late?
I think the people of Fiji have heard more than enough from all parties. Some have been at it longer in promoting their ideas. We've had a shorter time than them, but I believe we've communicated it loudly and clearly since we've been registered.
The question about if you end up in that situation where you hold the balance of power, and the scenario of the parties that you said you will not work with, how will it play out for you?
Well, I've said before, it'd be ideal if all the parties represented in Parliament could get in and form the government. And the whole party believes in a very, very strong and robust opposition. So if we were one of the 3 or 4 or 5 parties that got into Parliament, and the others were of a mind of forming the government, they got enough seats to have 30 or whatever it is, we will say good luck to you, sit in the government benches. We intend to be the best opposition that you will find in this country or any other country.
So if there's 2 major parties that say have won 22 seats each, so 44, then you end up with a balance of power, 7 say you hold the balance of power. How would you play that scenario out?
It'll depend on our policies and what we...
So you are willing to talk to all parties if you do come to that situation?
We prefer to be either in government or the opposition.
But you can talk to all parties? Like we've had some parties come and say we won't talk to anyone. Some parties have come and said we won't talk to anyone. Or some parties have said we'll talk to everyone except Fiji first. What is your stand?
We'll go it on our own.
So you'll do it on your own. Even if you hold the balance of power, you will decide whether you will sit in opposition or government.
If we got the balance of power, and we will prefer to be leading the opposition rather than being in government.
Mr. Tupou and Draunidalo, they are making it very clear that they will not go into government if they hold a balance of power. They would opt to stay in opposition, gunning to win 28 seats to form the next government. Of course, people go to the polls. The pre-polls start on the 5th of November, and everyone else goes for voting on November 14th. By November 15th, the morning of November 15th, we will find out with the provisional results out from all the count stations. But tonight, Ms. Draunidalo making it clear that she is not looking at a national minimum wage of $10 an hour. She's looking at proposals, and then tax rebates can be offered to these companies, and if they want to go in that direction. Also, she's looking at things sector by sector, not that it's overall that you'll have the minimum wage going up. Also, relying a lot on consumer spending when private investment anticipated to go up. They will give more details on that. She's also said that about 15 to 20 items will be going to zero-rated VAT. Those items will be confirmed in the manifesto later this week. The money lost from there, again, she will make further explanation on where they are expected to pick up. the total amount of revenue. Of course, government services need to run with government revenue, stability of government revenue, and also saying that the 2013 Constitution is the lawful Constitution now, which they respect, and of course there will be some review and changes based on some of the sections, mainly the Bill of Rights, where she says that they look at the limitations are not strong enough for the individuals. Now, Ms. Draunidalo, all the best
Thank you.
in your campaign. For less than 2 weeks remain before people go to the polls, the majority of the people. And also tomorrow night we have 3 parties coming for Straight Talk, and that would be the Fiji First's Premila Kumar, Sodelpa's Linda Tambuya, and National Federation Party's Seni Nambo. They will also be talking about a number of issues, the policies that their parties have, their individual stand on issues. So same time, same place. We start off at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Good night.
The 2018 general elections, the issues that matter, the people that matter. This is Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan.